The Expert Exchange with your host, Joshua Carnes, and expert guest, Laura Renner. Today's show is brought to you by Lion Business Advisors.
The content in this show is for informational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. The Expert Exchange is not a fiduciary by virtue of any person's use of or access to this content. The Expert Exchange is not licensed to practice law or provide legal advice. Nothing contained within this show is intended to be an offer to either buy or sell securities.
Welcome to The Expert Exchange, the podcast where knowledge meets success. I'm your host, Josh Carnes, and today on the show, we are going to have expert guest Laura Renner, and we're going to be talking about designing a business around your goals and lifestyle. Laura is with Freedom Makers Virtual Services. You can find more about Laura and her team online at freedom-makers.com. That's freedom-makers.com.
At Lion Business Advisors, selling a business is not just a transaction. You've poured your heart and soul into your business. It's not just a paycheck, it's your legacy. The team at Lion Business Advisors is here to guide you through the process, ensuring your successful exit. Contact the team at Lion Business Advisors at 800-525-3542. That's 800-525-3542, or visit us at lionbusinessadvisors.com. Lion Business Advisors. Let the story of your next chapter begin with us.
Get ready to expand your horizons and refine your strategies as we dive into designing a business around your goals and lifestyles with expert guests, Laura Renner. Laura is a member of the U.S. Air Force Reserve. She graduated from the U.S. Air Force Academy with a bachelor's in science in English and a minor in Chinese Mandarin. She served as a public affairs officer before leaving the Air Force to earn international MBA from the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. Laura has also worked for nearly 20 years dealing directly with people in foreign and public relations, education, and human resources. When Laura's not working to grow Freedom Makers, she very much enjoys traveling and having story-worthy adventures. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So before we dive into today's topic on designing a business around your goals and your lifestyle, why don't you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and about Freedom Makers and what it is that you guys do over there?
Sure. Yeah. So Freedom Makers, we help small business owners get things done with consistency by pairing them with a qualified military spouse as their remote team member. And that really came out of what I wanted out of my lifestyle around being able to work flexibly and work anywhere in the world, because I do like to travel. And yeah, so that's how I came up with the business around my lifestyle.
No, that's awesome. When we were talking about having you on the show and we hit all these topics, this one just jumped out to me, and I'm so excited that we could talk about it because I've been fortunate in my own business I tell people I got lucky. I have a lifestyle business. I have a business that has given me the lifestyle I want and allowed me to do all that, but I didn't do it on purpose. And so to know that there are people like you helping business owners do that on purpose is a great thing. And that's why I was really excited to talk to you about that. So let's dive into designing a business around your goals and lifestyle and what that actually means. So why is it important for a small business owner to design a business around their goals and why is it important for them to be intentional with doing that?
I think for one, it's important because we do have that liberty, particularly as Americans, to be able to do what we want with our lives. But two, otherwise, a lot of times people start a business because they want to get out of the corporate rat race or the trap that is a corporate job. But if you're not intentional, you run the risk of creating your business to be just another trap, just another job, and then you're just as miserable as you were before.
Yeah.
Maybe even more miserable because now you're responsible for your misery and for your income versus, you might, if you're miserable in a corporate job, you could slide for a few weeks and still get paid, right? But in a business, you can't do that. So then you just add to your own misery when you kind of wasted an opportunity to really design how you want to do it.
There's a lot of business owners who started their business out of a talent, out of a passion. And they might not have those specific goals in mind yet. They just, here's my talent, here's my passion, here's what I want to do, and they're diving in full force to a business. So what are some of the goals that a business owner should look at when they're doing that talent-based or that passion-based business to move over to that lifestyle? What are some things they should consider?
Yeah, I think that's great to think about around. It could even be like the types of clients you go for, but it could also be as simple as, what's your workday? I saw that when I was starting my business and a few of my friends were starting theirs. You feel this pressure that you're supposed to work 8 to 5. And maybe COVID helped reframe that a little bit, but you felt guilty if you weren't at your desk during a quote unquote typical workday. And I remember someone asking me, do you go to the grocery store midday? And I was like, I kind of struggle with that. And she had been in her business for a while, and she said, oh no, I love it. I go get pedicures mid-afternoon because then there's no line and I can just enjoy it. And that, I remember that really unlocked for me that how much freedom we have in designing our goals. And so when especially when you're starting out with a talent and or a passion, that's all you're focused on, which is great. But you can really take advantage of designing things like, what is your minimum income goal? How big do you want to be? Do you want to turn into running a business, or do you want to continue to hone your talent and your passion? Either answer is perfectly fine. Recognizing which one you want to do helps you determine what to do within your business. For example, if you want to grow your business to where you're running it, then you have to hire people who have that same talent and passion as you, right? If you want to stay focused on your talent and passion, then you have to hire people who can run the business, or recognize these are the things that will always fall by the wayside, and I'm okay with that, right? And so when you design it that way, then you can really be clear on what you need to focus on next, right? Or again, like designing your workday, or even, like I said, how you want to live, like the type of clients that you are willing to take on, how many you want to take on, right? And so you can really design all of that by thinking through how you want to apply your talent and passion.
Yeah, it's been interesting because at my company, when we're recruiting, I tell people, I go, look, this is a lifestyle business. You're going to get what you're going to make out of it. And I give them the example of, I have 3 boys and single dad. And so for me, coaching my kids in youth football, that's our thing. That's what we do. And so when the fall comes around, I'm out of the office every day by 4:30. I'm the guy who goes and helps set up fields and does all of that. But I'm back in at 9 o'clock working. But that's the lifestyle I've chosen. That's what I want out of it. And so it is interesting. When we're recruiting, we take that lifestyle approach into our new recruits, and we tell them, hey, look, it's a family first. This is how we're going to run it. So go do what you need to do. Just make sure your clients are taken care of, and you can schedule your clients around what it is you need to do. So it's, but I love what you're talking about, setting goals with that, because we didn't initially do that. It just happened, right? So
yeah. Can I ask you, on that journey, did you ever feel guilty about it, or how did you embrace, hey, I am going to leave at 4 every day, and be okay with that, and recognize that you get joy from that too?
No, 100%. So again, I think it comes down to creating a team. I got lucky that my 2 senior partners who do everything with me, I ran the plan by them, and I said, and this was probably 4 or 5 years ago, and my oldest was getting into it, and I said, I think I'm going to coach him. Here's what I understand that I think that means. I'm gone through the afternoons for the rest of the, all of this. And both my senior partners said, yeah, we would expect nothing less. So, they're like, we're going to be mad if you don't go do that now.
That's awesome.
And so it's, but I think it comes back to recruiting people with the same passion as you. I recruited them to say, hey, this is my passion. This is my vision for a company. And they were absolutely in line with that. So.
Yeah. And I'll add to, like, recognizing that you could do it, right? Because you could have maybe never even considered it and said, oh, I wish I could coach my son's football, but I can't because I have to work. Mm-hmm. When really you could, you just hadn't unlocked that, or someone potentially wouldn't have unlocked it. No, I can, right? And so recognizing that you could and then pursuing it is a big win.
Yeah, no, it was a huge win. And like I said, it's been 4 or 5 years now, and it's completely rolled into summer vacations and doing all that with intention of,
Right.
nope, we're taking this time and this is what we're doing. So
Right.
it's been a blast. But
I know an attorney who is also very dedicated to her kids. So every spring break, she doesn't have any client meetings. And she's very clear to her clients that I'm out.
yeah,
Like not even checking my phone. I am out, right?
I'm not that good yet. I'm still checking work. But
But that was her commitment, and she owned it, and her clients have to accept it. And if they don't, then she's not a fit for them, and that's okay too.
That's true. That's true. So a lot of entrepreneurs, and I was in this boat, they start a business without a clear plan. And so for those business owners that already have an established business, like when I said I got lucky, my team backed me and we rolled right into it and it worked. But for those business owners that are already working, their business is up and running, how can they really start to determine what their goals and priorities are and begin implementing those in their everyday business? What does that look like for them?
Yeah. So I'll start by saying the pitfall that I commonly see is when I get to this, then I can do that. And that's a risk because you may never get there. And so I always encourage people, start with now. It's never too late to change your goals or to change your mind, right? But start now, like, what do I want now? And start working toward that. As an example, pre-COVID, I knew someone, a consultant, who wanted to be able to travel, but he met his clients on site. And he said, well, when I'm ready to travel, I will switch to meeting them virtually. And I said, no, you got to flip it. You got to start meeting with them virtually now. Like you have to make that your boundary so that you can travel, right? Or when I get big enough, I will let this client go. But that client's making you miserable now.
Yeah.
Let them go now so that you can create space for the clients that will feed your joy and your passion, right? And then therefore you have the brain space to pursue everything else that you want to pursue. And so that's one of the things is start with now. And so you take that time, figure out what do you want to do? What do you want to coach football? Do you want to take spring break with your kids? Do you want to, whatever it is you want to do and work toward that. And I always encourage people to use sort of external boundaries to help you enforce it. So here's an example. It's a bit of a tangent, but I knew someone who had moved to a different state. And so her clients were virtual. She kept her clients in her previous state, but then she was attending networking events in her new state to start to build her network there. But it seemed like that region liked to do their networking during happy hour. And she drinks and that's fine, right? But she's like, I'm not trying to drink multiple times a week.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to drink while I'm trying to do business. I'd rather meet someone for coffee or for lunch or something like that. She's like, and so she was telling me, she's like, it seems like though that's the culture here. And how do I
was here in Austin, right?
How do I still build relationships without having to do that? And I said, if you had kids, would this even be a question? Because you have school pickup. And she's like, absolutely not. And I'm like, so why is it a question now? Right. So I'm like, and if you have to use that as a way to help you reinforce your boundaries, like pretend you have kids, be like, no, I'm not available. You don't have to explain why. You're just not available. I can meet you at 10 a.m. or at 12. Right.
Yeah.
And so, but it's hard to say no when you don't have a reason to say no that's not external. Okay. And so that's what I said, like, even in your mind, pretend you have kids, you have school pickup, so you can't meet them for happy hour. Then it makes it easier. And then over time you get in the habit and you're like, no, I'd like to meet it. I'm available at 10 or 12 or something like that. So that's an example of when you have taken that time to think through what you want to do, but you aren't there yet. One technique is to use external constraints to prevent you from saying yes to something you don't want to do, right? So like if you're trying to go virtual and you can meet a client locally, you can say, sorry, I'm not in your area that day or something to help you enforce those boundaries until they become natural.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but that's the key thing is instead of waiting, instead of saying like, when I get to here, I can do this, say, I want to do this now. How do I get there? And then build those parameters in place to help you do that.
I think that rolls into kind of the next question we have of, so those when the goals and priorities of the business owner's personal life don't really align with that of the business, what are some of the issues that you see like that of not being able to say no or something like that? So what are some of the challenges that those business owners face when their goals don't align with the business?
I think it can be a couple things. It might be fear that is a challenge, or it might be other things like, how do you change clients? And I don't know, part of me seems like it usually comes down to fear because like changing clients and stuff like that can be difficult, right?
Absolutely.
And but I think once you take that time to know what you want, you can work toward it, and then it's energizing to work. So even if you have to do it like one new type of client a year or something like that, you're working toward it, right? And I like to say too, like it's okay to just get started, even if you don't know for sure, but you know the direction you're trying to go. So I once heard a coach say, like, say we wanted to get to LA from here, but we don't have a map, we don't have a GPS, we just know it's west of here. So we just start going west. And there's not going to be a sign for hundreds of miles, but there might be one every once in a while, LA this way, right? But as we get closer to LA, we start seeing more and more signs that, we're going in the right direction. Yeah. So it's like you just get started and you just start going in that direction, knowing also that you can change directions, right? Like if you start accidentally going north, it's like, wait, that says Dallas. Let me turn left,
It's huge.
Yeah.
I think that's its own task in and of itself, is being an established business owner and being able to change direction or change your goals, right? And so I think you kind of hit that it is okay, but what does it look like if here was my goal and now I want to change that? What does that look like for a business owner?
Right. And I'll go back to the challenges as well. But I remember once when I think I was starting this business, maybe it was the business before, but I had become convinced that I wanted to do it alone. I didn't want any employees. I didn't want any contractors. I just wanted to be able to run a business that I could do by myself. And I was very excited and very happy about it. And I shared it with a mentor. And she said, "That's great, but don't lock yourself into it. You might change your mind." And I was like, "Oh, okay, great." And sure enough, 3 years later, I had employees. And so it's what I think a big part of what that looks like is being willing and being open to trying new things, recognizing that you can always backtrack too. I remember once I had this business, it was Freedom Makers, and I felt like I could go in any number of directions.
Yeah.
And I was terrified that if I went in a direction, it would sink the business. So I was frozen. I didn't know which way to go. And I was using the example of I was on a rock that was sitting on a point. And so if I went one way, it would tip the whole rock over. And a friend of mine said, "You're thinking steps 1 through 10 is step 1. And that if you fail in that one step, you're going to sink the whole business.
Yeah.
But really, you're going to get enough warning, enough lead time to know that you need to backtrack and go try a different step.
That this isn't right."
Exactly. So I think that's part of it is sometimes we get stuck in our heads that if I only take on this type of client, it will sink my business. Or if I only work till 4 p.m., it will sink my business. But really, it won't. And you just got to try it to see that it won't, right? Or just have faith that you'll see that it's starting to impact you negatively and be able to backtrack, right? And you'll have that time to be able to backtrack. And then like I had a friend who was constantly, I don't want to say constantly, but she was trying to, all the advice she was given was about scaling and growing, and she just wasn't comfortable with it.
Yeah.
But she would come up with, okay, I'm going to do this, 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 and this, and that's going to set us up to grow. And then she would never complete it. And finally she realized there's something in me that I'm not comfortable with. And she just accepted it. And she's like, no, I'm going to stay the size that I am. And that was perfectly fine for her, right? And for her business and for her clients, that was absolutely okay. And so she tried it a few times and she's like, I'm good with where I'm at. And so that's another example of of being willing to change direction and trying a few things and recognizing that that's okay. And it's not going to tank your business if it doesn't work out. Right. And then going back to the challenges, I think ultimately it comes down to that risk that I kind of mentioned at the top around it becoming another job, right? Like if your own mental health, your family connections, right? Like using you as an example, if you weren't able to coach, would you be as close to your sons as you are, right? For the sake of what? For the sake of more money? Because you have enough with your business, right? So it's for what cost, right? And then the impact of that on your own mental health and your physical health and just joy, right? Because like if you're waking up every day not wanting to go work in your own business, like that's
rough,
right? That's rough. Yeah. And so I think that's some of the challenges of not designing your business around your goals and your lifestyle is that it designs you, which then is not fun and not healthy.
One of the things in those challenges, so I know one of the biggest challenges that I faced as a business owner is when I was going to start hiring, and could I afford an admin, and what would that look like? And looking back, hiring an admin or an executive assistant, whatever you want to call that person, was one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. And I look back now, I wish I would have hired her a year prior, right? So I mean, not to completely roll in your business here, but that's what you do, right? So as the owner of a virtual assistant agency, how have you observed clients making that transition and benefiting from realigning their business with their lifestyle goals? And what kind of role does Freedom Makers play in that transition?
Yeah, I've seen clients come to us. I think one of the common definitions of small business owners is we're all control freaks.
Yeah, slightly.
Right. And so when business owners come to us is when they're ready. They're tired of doing it all themselves and they're ready for that support. Like you said, they're ready to let go of some of the things, but they still might be nervous about it. And so, but they're ready to at least explore it. Yeah. And then they hire us. And where we differ from other agencies is we tend to become sort of the right-hand person of the business owner, doing a little bit of everything. Like a lot of our people are sort of Renaissance people at the small business level. And so then they're like, you see sort of it click where they're just so happy. And either because they now don't have to do the things they don't want to do. And so then but their business is still growing, right? Or they have more time in the day that they're able to get through everything that they could. So they're able to better serve their clients or spend more time with their family. And so you just see them. So they're just either way, they're happier. They're achieving growth objectives or balance objectives. And that's neat to see when they do that.
Perfect. So, we're talking a lot about designing a business around your goals and lifestyle, right? So you have your own business, right? So Freedom Makers is yours. So how have you taken those steps to design Freedom Makers virtual services in a way that supports your goals and your lifestyle?
Yeah. So right from the start, it needed to be completely virtual so that I could travel. But then it worked out perfectly because that helped us. That was also in line with the mission of the company. And in fact, like when we have clients say, oh, I get that it's virtual, but do you have anyone local they could come to the office once a week or something? Yeah. We always say, even if we did, the risk of that is once the military moves them,
they're gone.
They're gone. So you've lost a team member and they've lost a work opportunity. So it helped us to stay committed to we're completely virtual, all of us from the beginning.
I like that.
As well as, so we now have, we have our internal team that runs the company and the Freedom Makers that support our clients. And the internal team, we have...
Is that what you call them? You call them the Freedom Makers?
Yeah.
I love that. That's great. That's great.
The internal team, we have people in all 4 contiguous U.S. time zones.
Okay.
And so it's also become important for us to be able to work asynchronously. And yes, we have meetings and it is hard to schedule meetings because of that. But we also recognize some people work at 10 at night. Some people work at 5 a.m. and we're okay with that. So it all started with me wanting to be able to travel, to have a business that could do that by being completely virtual. And then it just kind of took on this theme of freedom. So everything that's now a guiding principle for us. So everything we do to support our clients and to support our freedom makers is around what provides as much flexibility as possible for our clients and for our freedom makers. But it was one of those things too, where I didn't necessarily have a goal for how big I wanted it to be or what I wanted to look like when I started. It was more, it had to be flexible. And so I started it in April. June, we had our first client. The second year, we had a lot of growth, but we also had, twice as much time. So there was that growth. Then the third year, we grew by like 10%. And I realized it was me, that
Really?
I was holding us back. Because ironically, for having started an admin company, I really stink at admin. And so so the parts around matching freedom makers to clients, the skills part I was fine at. It was the scheduling that I was always dropping the ball on. And so that's when I was like, you know what, I think I need to hire some people. And then that's when we took off. And so for me, it was what I've learned or how I've designed it is around how do I work? But also slowly letting go of the things I'm not good at, recognizing I'm not good at them, and then letting them go has been a big part of I think the company's growth, because I'm not the bottleneck. Or when I am the bottleneck, I try and
The team will help you.
yes.
No, just being a business owner, it's a huge piece of knowing, here's what I'm great at, here's what I'm not. Let's go find someone to help where I'm not great to make the overall company great.
Exactly.
And so it's great that you've been able to do that.
I remember a coach said the fastest way to self-growth is start a business.
Yeah.
And so you
learn a lot there.
Exactly. If you're willing to, right? Because if you're still trying to force yourself into what you think society thinks, like working 9 to 5 or taking on any client, those types of things that make you miserable, right? And so then you don't learn anything.
You talked about the company growing and how a few years ago you made a shift and started hiring people and that. Did your goals and personal objectives change as the company went on? Have they always been the same? What did that look like?
Yeah. I don't normally say this out loud, but part of my original vision was to sit on the beach drinking Mai Tais, right? I don't actually drink Mai Tais, but anyway.
But that vision of being there.
Right. And pretty quick, I think with our first client, I realized that we couldn't just match and say, be happy.
Yeah.
There was follow-up customer service that was needed. And so recognizing that then is also shifted the how we serve our clients and our freedom makers. And then also shifted who we hired, or basically what roles we created in the company. But I think for me too, where I personally, my goals have shifted is I've realized how much I enjoy investing in our culture and in our professional development, which I did not anticipate when I started the company. And so now we focus a lot on that. And sometimes when I think about other businesses, I'm like, I don't know if I could invest this much energy in another business around culture and leadership development and things like that. And so I have become more involved than I initially envisioned because those things matter a lot to me. And I didn't realize they mattered to me until I started having a team.
The people matter.
Yes. And I mean, when you say it like that, maybe I did realize that, but I don't know how much I anticipated investing in that.
Yeah.
Because I've always believed that people help the bottom line. Like it frustrates me when corporations, their focus profits over people.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe if you invest in people, you'll see the profits from
100%.
it. Right. And so seeing that in action, though, requires more energy investment than I anticipated.
Speaking of something like that, so I know a lot of small business owners, they sometimes struggle with the tension between what they think they should achieve versus what they truly desire. And I think you kind of talked about that. But how do you recommend reconciling these conflict notions with small business owners between what they think, where they think they should be, and what they truly desire?
Yeah, I think partly it goes back to trying it in little doses till you're comfortable with it. Like, go to the grocery store midday and see that your
See
business
if the company implodes.
Exactly. And I remember too, another example is when I was getting Freedom Makers going, I was dog sitting and dog walking for income.
Mm-hmm.
And I was out in California at the time. And when you're spending a few hours every day out in the California sunshine, it's really nice.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember saying to a friend of mine, confiding in her, that I was torn because I really enjoyed it. So much so that I kind of wanted to do it all the time.
Yeah.
But I felt like that wasn't acceptable for someone with my education. And she was a classmate of mine from school. And I said, I feel like this is not okay. And she looked at me without flinching, without hesitating. She said, "Are you happy?" And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Then what does it matter?" And right then it was very liberating to just let go of what you think society expects of you because you're happy.
Yeah.
You're happy. You're able to take care of your bills or your family or whatever obligations you have that you have accepted, right? And so then you don't worry about anything else. And so then that was really, like I said, liberating for me. And so part of that is, again, thinking through, like, what do you actually want? And being okay with that,
Yeah.
right? Like, if you do want a big house, go for it. If you want a nice car, go for it. If you want, to be able to travel full time or whatever it is, go for it and be okay with that, right? And so I think that's part of it is really exploring what makes you happy.
Yeah.
And then relentlessly pursuing it without concern for what others think of you or what they'll say about it, right? And so, and that's harder, right? It's easier said than done.
Absolutely.
But as you get more used to it, I think it becomes a little bit easier, right? Like I said, going to the grocery store becomes a little bit easier because your company hasn't imploded. And just setting up, I think, like with me, what I try to do with my employees is, if I'm not as available as they need me to be, making sure they're okay telling me that, right? Because that's my fear. If I'm always off doing other things, am I not available for them?
Yeah.
So kind of setting that environment where it's okay for them to say, "Hey, I need you here," then I don't have to worry about it if I'm off doing something else.
One of the things that isn't on the list, but you've hit on it a couple times, and I think it's real important, is having someone in your life that you can bounce this stuff off of that isn't in your everyday day-to-day business, right? And so you hit on a couple of times how you were at a crossroads and you went and talked to someone and they said this. And it's pretty funny because my company, Lion, wouldn't be here today if I didn't have a mentor who said, "Josh, I think you're going in the wrong direction." And so it's funny, my company, I had a full business plan to go a completely another direction. And I sat down with my mentor and he just goes, "That will make you miserable. Have you thought about that?" And it was like, oh, that probably will. I was totally doing a business plan solely based on money and the pursuit of money. And luckily my business mentor just, he laughed and he was like, "That's not you. I'd like to introduce you to someone who does this." And so I think it's for those entrepreneurs out there, it's really important to find someone in your life who will give you honest feedback of, are you happy? Is everything getting taken care of? Then this is okay. Or the opposite. But
yeah. And I'll add who you're willing to hear.
Yeah.
And I found,
that's important.
Right. Yes. I do have mentors. I do ask a lot of people. I've also, one of the things I've learned about myself is I tend to process out loud. So when I'm stuck, I just start talking to everybody about what I'm struggling with or what I'm thinking about. But I also realized I had a couple, I guess they're vendors, but service providers, like, bookkeepers, attorneys, that type of thing, where whenever they spoke, I'm like, I'm not going to do that,
Yeah.
So then it became a criteria that anyone I hired as a service provider, I had to be willing to listen to.
Interesting.
And yes. And so if they provide insight that I'm like, no, I'm not doing that, then, or it makes me very nervous or uncomfortable, then I'm like, you're not the right one for me.
You're not even a fit.
Right. Exactly. And I've had service providers and mentors who tell me things that I'm not comfortable or ready to do, but because I trust them and I'm willing to hear it, I'll do that. Right. One example is raising prices. People would tell me I needed to raise my prices, and I absolutely was like, no way. And then my accountant, who I trusted, said it, and I was like, okay. And I went and did it. Right. And so I would add, right, to your point, people who are willing to say something to you, but also who you're willing to hear.
That's huge.
Is a big part of it too.
Yeah. What advice would you give those entrepreneurs who, you kind of just hit on this, feel uncertain about what they want their lifestyle to be? How can they start the process of designing a business around their goals and around what they want? Yeah,
I think starting somewhere, like, taking some time. I feel like I completely understand this. I like to joke, I'm a Gemini. I change my mind all the time, but and so figuring out ways to know if you're really interested in something and you really want it. Like maybe you want to be completely virtual, but then you recognize that you're not that productive when you're completely virtual. So taking time to explore things that you think you want and figuring out how to understand if you do want that, right? So for me, like when I was getting my business going, I learned that I'm someone who has a new idea every week kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that if I gave it about 3 weeks and I talked to maybe a handful of people, I would know if I was actually interested in the idea, right? So that became a rule that anytime I had a new idea, I had to wait 3 weeks before I could actually pursue it and maybe talk to a handful of people. And usually I would just get bored with it and move on, right? And I did that with Freedom Makers. I gave it 3 weeks. I talked to a handful of people and I was like, no, I'm still interested.
Like, I like this one.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's that piece. The other piece for me that I've learned is I've really learned how to listen to my body. If I don't want to do something, I will not do it.
Yeah.
And my body will tell me that, right? And it's just like, just how much I dread it, how much I drag my feet. And even, I don't know, it feels physical. Like I don't want to do this, and so it's not like a mental or emotional. It's like my body's like fighting me on it kind of thing. And just having recognized that that's what's happening and not forcing myself. Right. And so then I'm like, I don't want to do it. I'm not going to do it. And either we're just not going to pursue it or I need to find someone else to do it. But those took me a long time to learn. Like even, growing up, it was a rule. You had to have perfect attendance. So I didn't know when I was too sick to work. And when I was in the Air Force and I had a corporate job, my supervisors had to tell me when to go home or when to go to the doctor. Like they actually ordered me when I was in the Air Force to go to the doctor. And my supervisor in my corporate job was like, you need to go home. So it wasn't until I started my business that I had to figure out for myself when I was too sick to work. And in fact, I actually had an employee who was like, you might need to go to the doctor. It turned out I had strep, So anyway, over the years, I've learned to listen to my body, to recognize when I'm too tired, when I'm too sick, or when I just plain flat out don't want to do something, and accepting that if I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it. Yeah. And so instead of, right? And so I think that's part of it, is taking that time to understand what motivates you, how to recognize those signs about what you really are interested in, and then taking that time and really decide how you're going to explore those. Like for example, if you think you want to go virtual, maybe start 1 day a week or something like that to explore if that really is a fit for you. And then, or if you dive all in, that's okay too. You can go back to meeting in person, that type of thing, what works for you. Or even figuring out like if you want to have someone else do something, right? Start small, test it out. If it works, add more. If it doesn't, toss it, right? And so, and to your point, talk to your mentors, even hire professional guidance as well. And figuring out, that made me think of another example where I used to say, I should start saying it some more again, but there are two types of business owners. There's the executors and there's the big picture people, right? And if you're a big picture person, you got to hire executors.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're just going to talk about it all day and never get anything done. If you're an executor, you get a lot of stuff done, but you're not going in a direction. You're kind of, what's that called? You're rudderless, right?
Just doing the busy work.
Exactly. So you're getting a lot done, but are you moving anywhere, right? And so if you're a big picture person, you got to hire an executor. If you're an executor, you got to hire a big picture person. So that might be a CEO. It might be a coach or a consultant, or, if you're hiring executors, it's people who will actually get the work done kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So like my ops manager, that she's my, I hired her because I knew she would do.
She's the executor. She's getting it done.
Exactly. And so if you take that time, or if you hire professional help to help you figure that out about yourself, then that's great too, right? And then that can help you start to evaluate, what do you want out of your business? What do you want out of your life? Talk to your family members, talk to your friends, right? And they can tell you what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy too, right?
Yeah.
And then use that to start to identify what you want to experiment with in the design of your goals and your lifestyle in your business.
Yeah, I mean, we've done that even with our company. We've found that we are we're the perfect hybrid of, we have an office space, and someone was laughing at me the other day. They're like, Josh, it's been like 3 months since you've actually been in the office. And I was like, oh, that's right. We have one. I should go in, right? And then there's other times where it's like, I've been in there for 2 weeks straight. And some of our team use that hybrid flex space, and some of the people just never come in. But as we're all working, and I tell people the post-COVID economy has really opened that up for what works, what actually works for you as an individual and the company, and find that kind of in between. And so it's been great.
Yeah. And also what might work temporarily too, to your point around the hybrid. I remember I went through a phase where I was just not productive at home. I had no desire to work. And so I got a co-working membership.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I didn't talk to anyone while I was there. Just being in a working environment inspired me.
Getting out.
Yeah, exactly. To work. And I forget why, I think something, it was before COVID. So I can't remember what caused me to stop going in, but it was a positive thing. I didn't need it anymore. Right. But I remember I would go there and just free coffee and just being around other people working got me to work.
Get in the office. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, what other insights or advice do you have for small business owners who are really looking to create that model that suits their unique goals or lifestyle? What kind of leading advice could you give with that?
I think really take that time to explore what's important. Do you want more time with family? Do you want more time to travel? Do you want to only work with a certain kind of client? That it reminded me of, we had a client for a while who was an attorney. She was a family law attorney. And she said, but I only work with clients who are putting families together. And I just thought,
I've never heard of one of those.
Right. And I was like, what does that mean? And so she talked about adoption or, maybe a unique type of cohabitation from the, traditional marriage type thing. So that type of thing where you were bringing families together, or if it's like, a straight up adoption, or if it's like one parent adopting the other parent's child, that kind of thing. So, but she's like, I don't do divorces. I don't do that type of stuff. I'm bringing families together. And I had never heard a family law attorney specify. And that always stuck to me because I thought, one, how cool is that?
That's huge.
Right? That she recognized it and designed her business around that. And two, that to be able to do something where you just got to focus on the positive sides of family law, right? Or, I mean, you could spin that either way, but
well, of any business.
Exactly.
I'm going to focus on the positive of my industry.
Right.
That's huge.
I guess a final advice type thing is recognize the power you have in designing your business around your goals and your lifestyle, right? Like you don't have to take any client just because they're paying. Maybe when you're just getting started, but not really, right? And recognizing that gives you a lot of power like you said, I'm only going to work till 4 during the fall, or I'm not going to do happy hour networking.
Yeah.
Right. Or I'll do it once a month or something. Right. Like you have the power to decide how you're going to run your business, how it's going to integrate into your life. And I think that is monumental in when you recognize that, it becomes a lot easier to decide what your goals are and how you're going to integrate them. Recognizing it is really hard, or accepting it is really hard.
So this has been a really beneficial conversation for me. So hopefully it's been that way for everyone else. If someone wants to learn more about Freedom Makers virtual services and reach out to you guys, it's twofold question. So one, how do they get a hold of you? So we'll close with that. But two, I don't think we really hit on it, and I would like to kind of highlight a little bit, if it's okay with you. You hit on what Freedom Makers is. It's not just virtual services, right? Like that's the core and that's the service you're providing, but you're putting those spouses of military people to work while they're at home. And, for those who don't know the industry, like you said, they can be moved around at any moment. It's you're moving next week, here you go, sometimes even closer. And so putting them in a situation where they can earn that extra income, and that is huge for those families, I think is an amazing passion project. I don't even know if it's your passion project, but it's an amazing passion project to have. So, could you hit a little bit more on what you're doing in that space, and then how people can find out about you?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for I know I don't talk about it enough, but so it started, I was originally doing recruiting for small business owners. Mm-hmm. And I was meeting a lot of small business owners who weren't ready to hire, either because they were solopreneurs with not necessarily consistent or predictable revenue, mm-hmm. or they just weren't sure if they had enough work for an employee. Yeah. And then, of course, the compliance side, they were a little bit nervous around having the responsibility of an employee, but they still needed help.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile,
there's a lot of businesses like that.
Yeah. And meanwhile, I come from a military family. I was in the military. My brother's still active duty. And so I saw my mom go through it. I saw my coworkers' spouses go through it. And I see my own sister-in-law. Every time they move, she has to look for new work. Yeah. And depending on where they move, there may or may not be those type of career type roles available in that local economy.
Yeah.
And so when I was thinking about it, and they were getting ready to move, and they were actually moving internationally. And so I said, what are you going to do for work? And I'm like, man, I have asked her that like 3 times already in the 10 years they've been married, And so it just, something clicked for me. I'm like, man, here's this untapped source of talent and this unmet need on the business owner side or the small business side. And when I think about military spouses, regardless of education, regardless of work experience, every one of them that I've met are for sure good at 2 things: research and organization. Because when you only have a week's notice to move, yep. and you're going somewhere you don't know, and you've got to find a house that has good schools, you got to take care of the move yourself because your spouse is gone, right? And so then every single one of them, they're all organized and they know how to research. And what do small business owners need? Organization and research, right? You're not buying the big data analytics that the big companies are buying. You need someone who can Google, I need businesses in this zip code or something like that, yeah. right? And so, and that's what they can do. The other thing is they all tend to be Renaissance people who are just good at, they can do a little bit of everything. And what do small business owners need? Someone who can do a little bit of everything. And so it just, I don't think I definitely did not know that or appreciate that when I started. I just knew there was this untapped source of talent.
Yeah.
And so, but that seems to be our sweet spot. We tend to thrive with the solopreneur, small team businesses and who need Renaissance people. And then we tend to thrive with spouses who like to do a little bit of everything and like that flexibility because that's what we focus on too. We don't assign clients to them. They get to choose the clients they want to be considered for based on their availability and the kind of work, right? And we don't have minimum hour commitment from the client side. So it's all about flexibility. And that came from how I like to work, but also knowing what the needs of the clients were
Yeah.
and what the needs of spouses are. And so, yeah, so that's a little bit about us.
I just, you know, I think it's amazing. Once I heard that was I think it's truly amazing what you're doing there. And you know, my family has been around military family. I was military brat myself, and you know, grew up in that, and the moving and the transition that just goes on there. So having that extra resource for them is amazing, and it's always been a passion of ours to give back to the military. So I love that your whole business is just giving back to them, and that's great. So for those small business owners out there that are considering virtual services and want to get back, how do they get a hold of you guys? What does that look like?
Yeah, so they can go to our website, freedom-makers.com, and there's a way they can book a call with us. There's also, we call it a task audit for ones who aren't sure what they can delegate. They can just click through that and it gives them some ideas of, oh, you know, I don't want to do sales or I don't want to do finance. They click on it and it gives them sort of sample tasks, and then they can go through and say, only I can do this. I want to let go of this, or it could go either way. And then that kind of gives them a template for what they can let go of. But it all starts with they can just book a call with us through the website.
Perfect. Well, Laura, thank you so much for coming on today. Again, I think this has been a great conversation. So if you've enjoyed what you've heard today, you can always find us or connect with us on Twitter at X, the Expert Exchange, the EXP Exchange, or online on our website where this will be live, expertexchange.pro. That's expertexchange.pro. And if you would like to have more information or find resources on today's show from our expert guests, again, you can reach out to Laura and her team at freedom-makers.com. Again, that's freedom-makers.com. And remember, success is a journey, and we're so glad to be a part of yours. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Expert Exchange.
Content on this show is information of a general nature and does not address the circumstances of any particular individual or entity. Nothing in this show constitutes professional or financial advice, nor does any information on the show constitute a comprehensive or complete statement of the matters discussed or the law relating thereto. The Expert Exchange is not a fiduciary by virtue of any person's use of or access to this content. You alone assume the sole responsibility of evaluating the merits and risks associated with the use of any information or content on the show before making any decisions based on such information. In exchange for using the content, you agree not to hold the Expert Exchange, its affiliates, or any third-party service provider liable for any possible claim for damages arising from any decision you make based on information or other content made available to you through the show. The Expert Exchange is not licensed to practice law or provide legal advice. Nothing contained within this show is intended to be an offer to either buy or sell securities.